I think it's important to be self-aware of your flaws. I, for example, am a very opinionated and somewhat stubborn person, and I know that sometimes those traits can make me come off as a bit of a jerk. If you've watched some of my videos, tuned into my streams, or read some of my tweets, you might come to the conclusion that I'm a negative person that lives to point out the faults in media I consume, sometimes harping on them more than the positives. You might even start to assume that I hate or simply lack enthusiasm for gaming as a whole, and while that's not true, it's easy to see how someone might start thinking that. I do spend a good deal of time telling the world why I don't like something. But after a string of months where my mood was considerably more sour than usual, there's a community post that explains why if you're interested, I did want to reflect on a question that I've been asked plenty over the years and have also asked myself. Have I become too cynical toward video games? Yeah, probably. Honestly, that question has been on my mind for a long time, because I know I didn't used to be like this. I used to get excited over tons of games every year. I'd rewatch trailers over and over. I'd count down the days to each new release, and more often than not, I'd end up enjoying what I got. Even if a game wasn't all that great, I could still have a great time with it. Case in point, I will forever have a soft spot for the Minority Report game because I thought it was funny to throw people through glass windows. But that kind of wide-eyed excitement doesn't happen for me anymore. In present day, I don't really look forward to anything. I don't buy into hype. If I set any expectations, they tend to be more pessimistic. Some portion of that can be attributed to just getting older in general, but it's not uncommon for something new to come out alongside tons of positive buzz, only for me to go against the grain and point out various things I don't like about it. Hell, back when they showed that 2-minute trailer for the RE4 remake, my immediate reaction was to start picking apart everything that was different from the original. I'm not a mindless, hate-spewing robot, and when all is said and done, I'm really just sharing my honest thoughts, but it often feels like I'm being that guy. The sourpuss ruining everyone's fun, and I understand how that can be kind of annoying to listen to. It's kind of annoying to be. But these days, it feels like it's harder and harder for me not to be that way. At least toward AAA games. That's mainly what I'm talking about here. Realize that I didn't wake up one day wanting to have a negative outlook toward this industry. My cynicism simply didn't fall out of the sky, it's been slowly massaged over several years. I started playing games as a kid in the mid-90s, and for most of my life, gaming was constantly exciting. I witnessed a seemingly endless cycle of new ideas, gameplay innovations, graphical leaps. The medium continued to evolve in cool and interesting ways. But at a point, it felt like everything was figured out. Developers now know what works, they know what the market wants, they don't really have to test the waters anymore. Quality games are still made, of course, something can be derivative and still expertly crafted, but that complacency tends to make most entries in particular genres sort of blend together into one indistinguishable blob. Every open world game tends to feel like every other. Every shooter feels like every other. There's no need to alter the formula, because the masses buy them anyway. I find myself getting bored playing newer stuff pretty quickly because a lot of it feels similar to what I've played 100 times before. These days, it seems like the only real innovations we get are new and exciting ways to monetize. If a nickel and diming scheme is even mildly successful, every publisher rushes to jam it into their games to maximize revenue. Integrity be damned. Video games have always been a business. They have always had investors to please, but that reality is so often at the forefront now. It used to be you paid for a game, and that was it. Maybe there would be some kind of expansion or downloadable content sold sometime after, and that was fine because it was usually substantial, worth the additional asking price. But that doesn't really happen anymore, because now it's all about microtransactions. Paying for cosmetics that used to be unlockable through reasonable gameplay, predatory loot boxes, battle passes that make you pay for the privilege of progression, convenience items sold to overcome intentionally included inconveniences, none of these things improve the play experience. They unquestionably do the opposite. Instead of games being fun time wasters, they're designed to waste your time. Did you see how fucking quickly every publisher jumped on the NFT bandwagon? They did it before anyone even managed to come up with a good PR spin for them. That's how transparent the greed is. It would be bad enough if all of this crap was being shoved in alongside all the content we used to get, but often this greedy bullshit replaces it. You should expect games to be complete, to put their best foot forward in order to earn your money. But these days, they often come out broken and/or missing tons of content, some of which is then re-added later under the guise of live service updates. This big publisher complacency of, we'll patch it later, just make sure the storefront works, is so toxic. Just make a good standalone game and I'll give you money. I'm not asking for much here. Now, there's a prevailing less for more mentality running rampant through the industry. So many of our favorite franchises have gone downhill in one way or another because of this crap. Halo, Call of Duty, Battlefield, Gran Turismo, Diablo, The Sims, Fallout, Saints Row, all the sports games. These are examples of series that have either stumbled or fallen off a cliff with broken launches, missing or lazy content, predatory monetization, or all three, compromising the identity and goodwill their predecessors worked to build. It feels like watching a long-term friend that got straight A's in school slowly become a crack addict. It sucks, and there doesn't seem to be anything you can do to stop the decline. Of course, none of this is going away, because there's no incentive to change. You know that saying, vote with your wallet? Well, the masses voted, and they've told the EAs, Activision Blizzards, and Take-Twos of the world that all of this is fine. Realize that all of the content creators you watch, all of the YouTube comments or tweets you read bitching about the current state of gaming only make up a small fraction of the consumer base. Most people don't pay attention to all this stuff, or they don't care. That's how copy and paste garbage like Madden or FIFA can make billions of dollars every year despite their gutter trash reputation. Everyone mocked Diablo Immortal, right? But it still made plenty of profit. No matter how much backlash you see every time a publisher does something underhanded or tone-deaf, with rare exception, it usually doesn't make much difference. The corruption is simply too deeply ingrained for things to change. Multiplayer-focused games as a whole have lost a good deal of their appeal for me too. I used to put hours of playtime into PvP of all types. It was a nightly event for my friends and I, but that's nowhere near as common now. Part of this is a natural part of getting older, people get busy, and you're naturally not going to be as good playing online in your 30s versus when you're 20. But I also firmly believe these games have gotten less fun, and not just in terms of overall quality. An emphasis on challenge-based progression railroads you into playstyles or modes you might not be interested in, and for some reason, the biggest multiplayer franchises that became huge because they appealed to casual players have all tried to implement skill-based matchmaking, and I've never seen it done well. You'll hop into a game, maybe have a few decent matches, then find yourself unable to blink without getting melted. It's discouraging. Skill-based matchmaking is always a pendulum that swings wildly one way or the other. There's never a healthy middle ground in my experience. The only factor that should matter when putting players together in a lobby is connection quality. If you want to have a skill rating system, okay, make a separate ranked playlist and let us non-sweatlords have their fun. Please. Then there's this weird movement to sterilize online interactions. Long-established social features like voice chat, scoreboards, pre- and post-game lobbies are being phased out in a misguided effort to combat toxicity. Yes, some people on the internet are going to be dicks, that's a given, but removing the ability for your community to engage with one another, like a community, is a wild overreaction. You shouldn't be afraid to let players communicate because of the small percentage of douchebags trash-talking about KD. If you don't want to listen to these people, we already had a solution for that years ago. It was called the mute button. There were times in the past playing online where I was screamed at, called every slur under the sun. People threatened me and my family. And you know what? I can't remember any of their names, because they were strangers on the internet. What they said didn't matter. Don't use them as an excuse to dictate who I can and cannot talk to in your M-rated military shooter. I already have a mother, thank you. I don't need another. It also doesn't help that a lot of the discussion around gaming has become so polluted, usually focusing on overblown or straight-up meaningless nonsense. It's not just the games themselves that have gotten worse, it's also the people who are paid to talk about them. This might seem unbelievable to most of you now, but back in the day, I used to look up to gaming journalists. I visited multiple different news sites every day, absorbing whatever they had, because back then, the focus was on the games. Now it's marred by never-ending political discourse, like everything is these days. Everyone has an agenda to push, something is always offensive to someone, everything has to be turned into some rage bait headline, and if you criticize what we have to say, we'll dismiss it by labeling you as something horrible. It's a joke. I can't believe I used to think of these people as credible. This type of negativity-laden debate is so exhausting, and I really wish we could all go back to the glory days of common sense where everyone could just calm the fuck down. The irony isn't lost on me. I'm aware I'm a piece of that discourse too. It's hard not to be when you see it every single day, and at this point, it feels like we're too far gone to ever go back to the days of sanity. So, am I too cynical about video games? Maybe, but my cynicism is so often validated. I assume the worst, and I get the worst. Not all the time, no, but it happens a lot. It's like having a favorite deli that you've been going to all your life. You always know you're gonna get a quality sub there. But then, at a certain point, you realize all the employees keep spitting in the food. I can't just pretend that didn't happen. I don't hate games. I hate what so many parts of this medium have become. I really envy people that can look past all the bullshit, all the money-making schemes and missing features, and simply have fun with the core experience of whatever they're playing. I used to be able to do that, but now I'm an old, fat, bitter loser that's been red-pilled to death, and I can't unsee the myriad of problems laid out before me, no matter how much I'd like to. I truly believe that games as a whole used to be better, or at least more interesting, and that the golden age of gaming is already well behind us. I know some people out there will find those statements ridiculous. I've heard time and time again that games now are the best they've ever been. But I simply cannot agree. At least when we're talking about the AAA space. Indie stuff is another story. I'd probably be happier if I focused more on those titles, but what are you gonna do? While I do believe that the tools, technology, and developer skill sets are at a point where games could be the best they've ever been, as long as this industry continues down the path it's been on, I think that amazing potential will rarely, if ever, be reached. Or maybe I'm just an asshole.